Bokeh is a Python library which uses JavaScript to render and handle the user interface of interactive plots. The output can be either visualized in the Jupyter notebook or in a separate HTML document. To create a plot in Bokeh, we start by importing the show and output notebook functions, which are used to visualize the plots in the notebook. We import the figure method, which is the base layer of the plot. Then we import the column data source method, which is a fundamental data structure in Bokeh. The data source can be initialized from a dictionary or directly from a data frame. Here we use a dictionary containing the indexes and the values of the series storing the plastic waste generated in Sweden. We create the plot by calling the figure function, passing as arguments the dimensions of the plot in screen units, the axis labels, the axis limits, the title, and a list of interactive tools. Here we pick pan, which is used to drag the plot, box zoom to zoom in a region of the plot, wheel zoom to zoom in and out using the mouse wheel or the trackpad, hover to inspect the data using the tooltip, and reset to get back to the original plot. When we select hover, we also customize the information that we want the tooltip to show. In this case, we want the X and Y values, which we label ear and plastic waste. Now we overlay the figure with the so-called glyphs, which are the visual building blocks. Here we have two glyphs, circles centered at the data points, and a line connecting the data points. For both, we specify the legend label SE. Then we style some visual attributes. And here's the plot. As you can see, glyphs with the same label share the same handle in the plot legend. In the second example, we plot several datasets for the plastic waste of 8 countries. We import the palette category 10, which is the same as tab 10 in Matplotlib. This is a dictionary of lists of colors of increasing length, the full list corresponding to the key 10. Then we loop over the country names and the colors. Here we don't initialize the column data source object, instead we plot X and Y directly. This is a valid approach. However, when we want to add widgets to our plot, we generally need to work on a data source. In addition to the styling of the previous plot, here we add a click policy to the legend, which allows us to hide a dataset when we click on its legend handle. In this third example, we plot the 2D array which we discussed in the Matplotlib lecture on advanced plots. We initialize the column data source and we create the image glyph. As opposed to the Matplotlib imshow function, here we specify the position of the lower left corner and the width and the height of the plot regions that the image will occupy. Then we initialize a color mapper and we use it to create the color bar. Now we build on this figure and add a slider widget. The figure and the widget will be embedded into the document container. We modify the original function of two variables so that in the circle we plot the cosine of x times y multiplied by a parameter c, which will be controlled by the slider. First, we define a makeData function, which returns the 2D array, and a makePlot function, which returns the bokeh figure overlaid with the image glyph. These functions are basically copy-pasted from the previous cell. We load the slider widget and the object column, row, and widget box, which are used to place the widget in the document. To embed an application in the notebook, we define a makeDoc function which modifies the bokeh document. In this function, we initialize the slider widget, which will allow us to interactively vary the value of the C parameter. Then we define an updateData function, which retrieves the current value of C from the slider, passes it to the makeData function, and updates the column data source object. To couple the slider with the data source, we call the onChange function of the widget and pass the updateData function as an argument. We create a box containing the widget and we define the layout of the document. With column, we place the slider on top of the figure. With row, we could place them side by side. The layout is then added to the current document using the addRoot function. Now let's see how to use Bokeh to plot categorical data using different colors and markers for different categories. We start from this data frame, which we obtain by reorganizing the Eurostat dataset on waste treatment using the makeDF function defined in the last video lecture on Matplotlib. We import two functions which map colors and markers onto the labels stored in columns in the data source. Here we want to assign different markers to the ears and different colors to the waste categories. We initialize the column data source, passing the data frame directly. We generate the figure and specify the format of the information shown by the tooltip. Then we add the scatter glyph. The first two rows are the labels of the columns containing the numerical values for x and y. The third argument is the data source. We specify the size and the transparency of the markers. Here we want a marker to be partially transparent and to become fully colored when the tooltip hovers over it. We also want a different marker for each ear. To that end, we pass three arguments to the factorMark function: the ear column name, the list of markers, and the corresponding ears. We want the legend to show the waste categories which are associated with different colors. In this case, we use the factorCmap function, which is analogous to factorMarker. We pass the waste column name, a string indicating the palette, and the corresponding waste categories. As we can see, the plot is rather crowded and it would be convenient to select interactively the data for the various ears. The checkbox button group widget allows us to do exactly that. We define a makePlot function to generate the figure we have just discussed. Then we define the modifyDoc function following the same scheme that we use for the slider widget. First, we initialize the checkbox button group widget, passing a list of button labels, and the index of the labels we want to be active initially. The number of active ears is between 1 and 4, and they can be retrieved from the active argument of earSelect. The update function does exactly that, creates a list of active ears and passes it to makeDF to create the new data frame. This is then used to update the column data source.